Matt, so on that letter, I think that was sent about more than 2 weeks ago. Does the United States have some sort of an interim assessment on how Israel has done so far in terms of fulfilling U.S. requirements, given what's going on in northern Gaza too?
So we have been watching and engaging with them about each of the steps that we called on them to implement in that letter. Now, I'm not, during this 30-day period, going to go through line by line and say which one has been implemented and which one has not, although we are very carefully tracking that. And we are engaging with them about specific steps that we want to see them take. But I don't think it's appropriate for me, while we're going through this process, to go through one by one and talk about where they are. Just speaking largely, though, or speaking broadly, I should say, we have seen some progress, but we haven't seen enough. So I said last week, what the Secretary said last week, it continues to be the case that we have seen them take some initial steps, but we need to see them do much more, and we are engaged with them to impress upon them the importance of doing much, much more.
Right. Given it's another 2 weeks left, I believe, how confident that are you that they are actually going to fulfill these?
I don't think it's appropriate for me to make any predictions at this point. We made clear what the steps are we want to see implemented. We put a deadline on it. Let's wait until we get to the deadline to talk about where things stand.
Right, and about this deadline, there is a lot of commentary out there, and in the law, there is no grace period. You are saying at this moment in time that you have not seen enough from Israel. So I just want to ask the question that a lot of people out there are asking: why not implement the law now?
We are implementing the law. We have not assessed them to be in violation of the law at this point.
But you're just saying they're not fulfilling the things that you want from them. That,
correct.
They are impeding aid into Gaza.
That is not what I said.
They're not impeding.
That is not what I said. We have outlined a number of steps that we want to see them take in the letter.
Right.
Now, to answer your question, the reason why we didn't set an immediate deadline, or you have to implement all these steps 5 minutes after you get the letter, or you have to implement all these steps 7 days after the letter, is because there are some of the steps that we understand take actual time to implement. If you look at some of the, but we thought that 30 days was an appropriate measure, not 2 weeks, or we'd put 2 weeks in the letter. There were some things that we wanted to see happen immediately, and we saw some of those happen immediately. We saw Erez reopen immediately. We saw the Jordan route reopen immediately. And the letter made clear some things we want to see happen immediately, and then we need to see other things happen within 30 days. We're not yet at 30 days. I promise you we will have an extensive conversation about this at the end of that 30-day period, but we're in that window now.
Okay. But I'm just having trouble understanding how the two things add up, and that is, the Secretary has said, you've said, whatever Israel was doing to ensure more aid goes into Gaza, that has fallen off significantly. There hasn't been a sustained effort, and they have not been doing enough for a sustained period of time. How does that not mean that they are impeding? They're not impeding aid. Like, how can those two things be true at the same
because
time?
we have not judged them to have.
So despite the fact that they're not doing enough,
we had not.
Haven't been impeding aid.
So we thought it was appropriate that when we saw the decrease. Look, there are a lot of reasons that aid cannot make it in. Some of them can be intentional. Some of them can be unintentional. Some of them can be bureaucratic, either inside Israel system or inside the UN system. Some can be the effect of criminal looters, who obviously the government of Israel does not control and is not responsible for. And so, given all of those different factors that can go into the result that we saw, and the result that we saw was aid coming down more than 50% from its peak, we made clear that, look, on the things that you can control, on the things that the government of Israel can control, recognizing that you don't control everything, we want to see steps. And at the end of those steps, we will come back and talk about what the results have been.
Just one final thing on northern Gaza. When you were answering, I think, Shannon, you talked about this endless cycle that the Israeli military seems to be in right now. So is the U.S. calling the Israeli military to wrap up, to finish what it's doing in northern Gaza now?
We want to find a durable end to the war. And I say the durable end to the war is important, an important way to think about it. We've not called on Israel to just withdraw from Gaza and leave a vacuum there, because a vacuum actually doesn't help the Palestinian people, who would be once again living pretty immediately under Hamas's tyranny and would be potentially subject to the same jeopardy that Hamas has put them in for the past year by launching terrorist attacks against Israel. And it certainly wouldn't solve Israel's security problem. It would potentially land us back in the same place months or a few years down the road. And so that's why we are working to restart talks, which happened over the weekend, to try to find a durable end to the war. It's why we're working on the plans for what follows the war with our partners.
Oh, actually, just really the final one. On this special channel or like mechanism to talk about civilian harm incidents, you said you're still talking. Can you explain like why it hasn't been set up?
I don't have any more to read out today. It's an ongoing discussion between us and the government of Israel, and I just don't have any.
So when you say that you raised it with you raised this particular incident of today with the children killed.
Yes.
You raised it with the U.S.
The United States raised it directly with the government.
It
of
was the
Israel.
ambassador.
I'm not going to get into who, but it was
Okay.
conversations
Thanks.
from our government to theirs.